Welcome to Summit 2024. We're absolutely thrilled to welcome you here. Last night, the cocktail reception was great. It was great to see friends and faces from many, many years back, and also to meet many new people. We have over 100 first-timers at Summit here. So please come and introduce yourselves to me and to others at ReSource Pro and to your peers. We absolutely love this event. We get to spend time with you and talk about insurance operations. What could be better? Exactly. We have industry leaders here, but we also have our peers. Every event that we do starts with our networking roundtables so that you have, at the very beginning of this program, an opportunity to meet other people and share ideas and learn from each other. People at ReSource Pro events are very generous with their experience. So, what I'd like to do is carry on this tradition right now and suggest that you take a minute to write down 1 or 2 goals that you have for this summit. And then turn to somebody that you don't know, introduce yourself, where you're from, and share those goals with them. So let's just do that for a minute. I hate to break it up, but let's keep going. Hopefully by writing down your goals for the summit, you can lock it in, and let's make that a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're also absolutely thrilled that this is a special summit for us. This is our 20-year anniversary at ReSource Pro. And we're so grateful that you're here to celebrate it with us. Now, since there are so many first-timers here, I thought what I would do is take you on a little trip down memory lane and share with you the history, the humble beginnings of ReSource Pro. We were founded back in 2004, right? So, 20 years ago. What happened in 2004? Well, it was the final season of Friends. And the Facebook had not yet graduated Harvard. Actually, the roots of ReSource Pro go back to 2003, the year before, and an MGA in New York City, Distinguished Programs Group, had a market with Kemper. And when Kemper was downgraded and very soon went out of business, they found themselves with 13,000 D&O accounts that needed to be canceled and rewritten to a new carrier in about 3 months. And they realized that if everybody put everything to the side and worked nights and weekends, it would still take them more than a year. So they were in crisis mode. They had an employee, a former employee, called Matthew Bruno. Matt's here somewhere. There's Matt. And Matt was visiting New York from China, where he'd gone to teach English. And they said, Matt, look, come in and help us process these transactions. And so Matt came in for several weeks and eventually said, guys, I'm sorry, I'm going back to China. I have a girlfriend in China. And as much as I love insurance processing work. So they said, Matt, here, take this laptop and find an internet connection, and maybe you can help us from there. And we then went to a college student, Christopher Watkins, who today is our Chief Information Officer. Where's Chris? There, over there. And Chris figured out there was this thing called terminal server that you could actually connect remotely from China to the United States, and figured out how to connect that. And within 3 months, they'd completed this project. At which point, the folks at Distinguished said, look, here we are. We're in New York City. Office space is expensive. Our underwriters hate doing processing work. Our turnover rate of underwriters is too high. Why don't we tell the underwriters you have an assistant who can help you with the work that you don't want to do? Do you have a problem? And at the time, they had policies that were being issued with months of backlog. So they said to Matt, See if you can help. And within 3 months, 90% of policies were being issued within 48 hours. At that point, they said, we think we have a business. They then went to other MGAs to see if anyone had a need. I'm delighted to say that we have 3 people from our very first client, Paul Hansen Partners, here today. They had a need because they had 3 underwriters in Napa, California, doing 30% of their time in overtime. And within 3 months of working with ReSource Pro, the 3 underwriters went back to the principal and said, we're no longer doing any overtime. In fact, instead of hiring that 4th underwriter, why don't you just divide that person's salary between the 3 of us and we'll all be happy? And that's what happened. So that was the genesis of ReSource Pro. I thought I'd share with you, if you'd like to see, a picture of Matt and Leaf, our founding employees, back in 2004. Actually, let's take a closer look at that office. I don't think that's very good clean desk policy. But we'll give them a break. We've worked on that since then. So, at which point, there was this view, okay, we think we've got a real market opportunity. Let's go hire somebody who can help us go build that market. So they hired me. Not really the resume of somebody to go build a market. I mean, they practically pulled me off the street in Manhattan doing bad stand-up comedy for free steak dinners. No insurance experience, so how was that going to go? Well, fortunately, there was a real craving in the market for people who could solve a need. It was a very, very tight labor market in 2005. And so my job was to go around and say, how can we help? And the alternative to ReSource Pro at the time was hiring temps or going through an arduous process of trying to find employees. And it just took off. But we had this kind of killer app at ReSource Pro, as the wildcrats would call our creature power. And that was, we had team leaders offshore who could learn the work and interact directly with the clients, building trust very rapidly. It made my job very easy, such that by 2009, we'd grown so quickly. Over 3 years, we'd grown almost 2,300%, 2,239% over that 3-year period. And we've stayed on that Inc. 5,000 list pretty much since then. Only one of 14 companies that have been on that list for more than 10 years in a row. But what was really the secret to that success? Basically, 4 service pillars define us. First of all, great poses. No. Insurance knowledge. We believe that even more important than technology is insurance knowledge. Because if you understand the process, you can manage the complexity. Second of all, Tesla may talk about ludicrous acceleration, but we talk about a ludicrous attention to quality. Thirdly, we don't look at individual transactions to reduce the cost of the transaction. We're looking at the end-to-end process, because that's where the cost is, that's where things get lost in the back and forth. It's about driving throughput through the end-to-end process, driving up productivity to create revenue capacity and reduce the total cost of that process. And finally, we don't believe in vendor relationships. I think you know from the relationships that you have with your teams that our people are really dedicated and they seek to build trust and trusted partnership. That's what ReSource Pro is about. Business is personal to all of us. So our offerings have changed over the years. How did it start? Well, we started out by providing capacity. I would say it's kind of the classic staff augmentation model. We used to call it remote staffing, where people are provided as a utility to solve localized service constraints. And what we realized as we worked with client after client, task after task, function after function, is that there was a bigger opportunity to knit these tasks together into broader processes across multiple different offices, to standardize across them, and to drive broader operational solutions to drive up productivity. We called this business process management. And then the most advanced iteration of this is what we think of as being more transformational, where you go deeper in terms of insurance knowledge and tech enablement in order to enable our clients to really focus on your core mission to deliver not just improved productivity, but ultimately improved insurance outcomes. So an example of this is how we think about certs. Some providers may look at the process and say, well, we're going to generate the cert and we're going to issue the cert on your behalf. But we believe that a cert is not just an administrative function. It can be, in many cases, a moment of truth. If there's a contractor waiting to be paid or waiting to get into a job, they need that cert done right the first time. And so we look at the process and we say, well, there's upstream steps that are very time-consuming for service teams to review the contract, compare it to the policy, and get the language right. That we look at that end-to-end process ultimately to make sure that experience is there right the first time. So where are we today? In 2024, we have more than 9,000 employees in multiple offices in China. Our fastest growing operation is in India today with more than 2,000 employees. We have multiple offices in the United States. We're delighted to welcome into our family a number of companies that we brought in, that we've acquired, MIS, Helix, Insurance Licensing Services of America, the Nolan Company, and Strategy Meets Action, which are now all part of ReSource Pro, and they're all here, and you can meet them in the course of the next few days. But where are we heading as an industry? What challenges are we facing looking forward? We created this with OpenAI. It's elephant trying to get into small box. So what elephants are we trying to squeeze into boxes in our industry? What kind of constraints do we face? Well, the insurance industry remains complex and fragmented. How do we see that? Well, of course, there's tens of thousands of insurance agencies and thousands of insurance companies, each with their own systems and different lines of business and thousands of SIC codes and almost limitless variations of risk. And all of this is constantly changing and moving. It defies easy standardization. And that is challenging if you want to automate or streamline workflows. But let me show you how we experience that on your behalf. So this is a kind of peek behind the ReSource Pro curtain. So what we see is low volumes per task, high variability, semi-structured PDFs on 60% of the tasks, and of course, high quality expectations. This translates into, for ReSource Pro, we have 50,000 standard operating procedures that we have documented for 300 core tasks. And the average is 0.12 FTEs per task. Right? Think about having to automate 0.12 FTEs. Well, we can get 20-30% increase in productivity on that, but is it really worth it on every single one of those? And every client, on average, has about 7 procedure changes a month, and sometimes it can be a lot more. And every procedure change, you've got to validate the change and document the workflow, and then test it, and then make sure that it's correct and it works across all of the offices for the client. And we have to maintain a 99.96, and we do maintain a 99.96% delivery on quality because you demand it. And yet, with all of that, our teams have saved 2.8 million hours for our clients across 40,000 ideas that our team members have come up with using technology. But that is scratching the surface of what the real need is across all of the workflows. Another challenge that we face as an industry is retiring insurance industry professionals who are leaving the industry and taking their deep knowledge with them. These are producers and underwriters and adjusters and account executives who have years of nuanced experience of managing different kinds of risks. And what's going to happen when they leave? As of 2023, there were almost 51,000 open positions, and over 400,000 insurance professionals are going to leave over the next 3 years, or expected to leave over the next 3 years. Technology can't replace that insurance knowledge. It's going to be a challenge. What are some of the imperatives? Well, first of all, we have to figure out how to perpetuate insurance knowledge into our systems, into our people, into our organizations. We have to increase the productivity of our existing people. If our producers and underwriters and account executives can support 20% more revenue or more accounts, then that goes some way to addressing that knowledge gap. We have to leverage technology and AI wherever applicable and appropriate, and we have to either train people or gain access to talent wherever it is in the world. Another risk, or another challenge, is that emerging risks are coming at a rapid pace, and they're going to challenge insurers to respond. We know what the risks are: cyber, AI, climate change. And the challenge is that it's creating new kinds of losses, and we don't have the historical data necessarily to develop the actuarial models quickly enough to adapt. So what are some of the and therefores? Well, MGAs and specialty carriers will probably be the fastest to adapt to new opportunities. Producers and their service teams will have to gain more specialized knowledge in order to develop a more effective risk assessments. And underinsurance, which we see today, will continue to be chronic for lines like building ordnance and flood and business interruption. And just having the time to read an insurance policy and understand how sublimits and exclusions may have changed and compare them across different carrier policies, just doing that might make the difference. So, how can we turn these challenges into opportunities? And finally, technology, data, and AI hold tremendous promise, but the use cases are still early stage, and they increase complexity and the requirement for skilled individuals, and they challenge the adoption of these technologies across our organizations. Some of the learning so far is automation is rigorous. It takes standardization and discipline, deep process disciplines. And maintenance very often is more critical than creation. It's easy to create an algorithm, but those algorithms can get stale very, very quickly, and if you don't stay on top of them, it can create enormous risk. And finally, users need both insurance knowledge and technical skills, and those two often don't go together, especially with people leaving the industry and taking that knowledge with them. So we decided to survey the industry. These are not our words. These come from our advisory team who ran surveys of insurance carriers, MGAs, and agencies. And this is what your peers have said in terms of how they think their roles will change. So producers will become more specialized and focus on more complex risk. Counter executives will spend more time dealing and interacting directly with clients, and more use of business process outsourcing. Yay. Your words. Underwriters will spend more time on portfolio management than individual risks, and new data science or AI will change roles for underwriters and adjusters. So lots of changes coming. We are absolutely thrilled that you're here to have these discussions and start these discussions with us over the next few days. So the discussion starts here, but let's not forget that we're also here to celebrate. So we're thrilled to have spent the last 20 years with you. We're looking forward to the next 20. Thanks so much.